Hi people, it's me Anja, my pronouns all she and her, and welcome back to my channel for a new video. Today's video is a part 7 of my favorite books with bisexual main characters. And as someone who reads queer books quite frequently, I feel like bisexual representation is the most common type of representation that I read under the queer umbrella, just because like I do read a lot of sapphic books and Achillean books, but so often, like, explicitly, the authors don't say what labels the characters use explicitly. So I feel like bisexuality is one of the most common explicit labels that I see in the queer characters that I'm often reading about. If that makes any sense, I would say bisexuality and lesbian representation is probably the most common, because I don't know. Anyway, basically this video is long overdue, and sometimes I just get really overwhelmed by all the book ideas that I have, so I film something like newer instead, hence my most recent sports gay book recommendation video. So anyway, all these books basically I read years and years ago instead of more recently, but I would still highly recommend them because I do really enjoy them. So anyway, without any further ado, the first book on this list is called Finally Fitz. This story is a YA contemporary following a bisexual main character who is fake dating her childhood best friend to make her ex-girlfriend jealous. And I love this book so much because, first of all, fake dating is one of my favorite romantic tropes. I think it's so cute and so well executed. And I love Fitz as a main character. I loved her relationship with her sisters and her anxiety and the room and social media and everything were done so well. This is truly one of my favorite queer books because I think it's so good and I think it's so underrated and it deserves so much more hype. The fact that I'm still remembering like details about this book, like the fact that she has sisters, even though I read this book like, I don't know, 2 years ago, at least a year and a half ago, speaks volumes, because typically sometimes when I read a book, like I don't remember details like that after reading it months later. So anyway, all that to say, this book is really good and I would definitely highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Something Kindred. This story is a YA magical realism, like urban fantasy, that follows a Black bisexual main character who's spending the summer in a small town with her estranged, dying grandmother. I think this book is so good and so well done. I loved the world building so much. I'm hesitant to call this book a magical realism book just because I thought originally that the term magical realism only referred to books with specifically like Latina representation, and this book features a Black main character, but then I don't know if that's completely accurate anyway. But anyway, I would say this book has some urban fantasy, horror, paranormal elements, and it has ghosts, and I think it's really good. And I love the plot and the characters and the queer representation and everything. Like, I think this book is so fantastic and so good. I love mysteries that are set in a small town, especially navigating like estranged family members in a history like that. I think that is always very interesting and fascinating to me because I love a good contained like mystery regarding history. I don't know if that made any sense. Anyway, this book was so good and I would definitely highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called This Is Me Trying. This story is a YA contemporary following two former best friends whom I believe one of them identifies as bisexual and the other one identifies as pansexual, and basically they're navigating grief and love and mental illness and forgiveness, and I think this book is so amazing and it's so well done. Whenever I read this book, whatever year that was, I rated it 5 stars because it made me cry 4 times. I love these characters. I love the exploration of grief. I love the exploration of like being estranged best friends and what that really means. I think this book is fantastic and I love it so much. I love the writing and the plot and the characters and the queer representation and literally everything about this book. Like, I love it so much. This author is a genius. I didn't think that she could top Ophelia After All, which I also rated 5 stars, and I also cried 4 times during that book, but she did. Like, this book is absolutely excellent, and it's so well done, and I love it so much. So anyway, with that said, I would definitely highly, highly recommend it, but please check the trigger warnings before you enter this book. So anyway, with that said, I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called This Dark Descent. This story is a YA fantasy following 2 queer main characters, one of which identifies as bisexual, and I believe the other one identifies as demisexual, and basically it's centered around a horse race that is famous for its high body count and cash prize. And this book also has Jewish mythology in it. I think this book is so good and so fantastic. Since it is a fantasy, the labels for their sexuality have been confirmed by the author outside of the book, if that makes any sense. It is not explicitly stated within the text itself, but I think this book is so good and it's so fantastic. First of all, I love the characters and I love the world building. I've always praised the author in the past for her world building because I've read so many of her books before. I think the majority of her books are so good and so vivid and so well done, but like these characters really make the story come to life so much more. I loved the pacing and the plot and the found family, and the sequel was so good too. I think this book is so fantastic and it's so excellent and it deserves so much more hype. So anyway, with that said, I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The last book on this list, and definitely not the least, is called The Dark We Know. This story is a YA urban fantasy horror book following an Asian bisexual main character who's returning to this small town that she never thought that she would return to because 2 of her childhood best friends passed away there, and now her last remaining childhood best friend is claiming that supernatural entities is why they died. Does that make any sense? Anyway, I thought this book was so good and so well done. Like I said earlier, I love a fantastical mystery tied to a small town, tied to estranged best friend relationships. Like, I love it. This book was so good and so fantastic. First of all, I loved the queer representation. I loved the Asian representation. I loved the characters and the mystery and everything. I should have included this book in my favorite queer horror books video that I filmed a few weeks ago. Or maybe I filmed that a month ago. I don't know. I pre-film all of my content, so sometimes I can't quite remember the exact date as to when I filmed a video because it's always different than the date when the video is public. So anyway, this book is fantastic. It's excellent. It's well paced. It deserves so much more hype. I loved the characters and the mystery and the horror and everything. I think this book is fantastic and it's brilliant. So anyway, with that said, I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. So in conclusion, I don't know if anyone really noticed that this video is overdue, but I'm sorry anyway. I would say the factors that led to this video being overdue is the fact that, first of all, I only include books in my book recommendation videos that I've rated 4 stars or higher, and I truly have not read a lot of really good books with bisexual main characters recently. And second of all, I do honestly get really overwhelmed by all of my video ideas that I have, so I end up filming none of them, and I end up filming a reading vlog or a recent reads video instead. And third of all, sometimes towards the end of the year, I can anticipate myself getting burnt out, and sometimes lately, I feel like TikTok is adding to that anticipated burnout. So yeah, anyway, that's that. So in conclusion, I hope that this video helped diversify your bookshelf. I hope that there will be more books in the future with more explicit bisexual representation, because I always hesitate when it comes to putting certain books on these lists, because I don't know always if a book has explicit bisexual representation that has been confirmed by the text itself or by the author. And also, I only want to include, again, books that I've rated 4 stars or higher, and also books where the narrator is bisexual and not just when the love interest is bisexual, if that makes any sense. Like the main character themselves identifies as bisexual. So anyway, I don't know if that makes any sense at all. But in conclusion, if you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below one of the heart emojis that is the cover of the bisexual flag. So pink, purple, or blue. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Thank you so much for listening to me rant. I really, truly appreciate it so much. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.